Yes. Yes. Here, folks. I think a few folks are still filing in, but I just wanted to say good morning, everybody. Welcome to those of you here in our sanctuary at Metro East UU congregation, and greetings to everybody who's watching this remotely, whether today on Sunday or a different day of the week. This is our welcoming religious community, and we are so glad that you are here. I'm Reverend Dr. Claudia Hall. My pronouns are she or they, and I am delighted to be here as the minister of this congregation. It is so good to see everyone here today, both new friends and returning folks. And I hope that we'll all take time, not just during our welcome moment, but also during coffee hour, to kind of reach out to somebody new, say hello, make a new friend, get to know somebody. We welcome everyone this morning, and I wanted to let you know you should have a little piece of paper. This is the lyrics to our prelude. We're not going to sing it, but that way you can follow along if you wanted to know what is in it. So we welcome everyone this morning to this home of comfort, spirit, justice, and hope, for we are Unitarian Universalists. So for those of you who don't know, we did a sewing circle last Wednesday, so you no longer have to be afraid to sit up front. We now have nice, cushy, squishy seat covers. So we're very excited to have those on those hard metal seats for sure. So a great big thank you to Denise and Lorna and Suzanne and everybody who showed up. I'm forgetting half the people, I'm sure. Amy was there and Jesse, and it was just a wonderful time to get together and have some fellowship and make these things. And we'll actually have more coming as well, so that way you will have a chance to have nice cushions wherever you may be. So an important ritual in our faith is not only having comfy seats and hot coffee, both of which are very important to us, but even more important, the spiritual discipline of lighting our chalice. We light our chalice for reason, for community, for hope, for so many reasons we gather today. And as you're watching here or elsewhere, if you have a different chalice or candle to light, feel free to do it now. And then for all of us, I invite you to join with me as we say our unison words as we light our chalice. We hallow this time together by kindling the lamp of our prayer. Will you join with me as you're willing and able in a spirit of prayer and meditation? Spirit of progress and process, may we be inspired by our ancestors in faith and gifted with clarity of vision, calmness of heart, and fire of purpose as we plan and think and strategize for what we can do as a congregation in this new year. Amen, and blessed be. Since we do have so many new and returning folks in our congregation, we have a moment that we've set aside for you to just find somebody that you don't know, that you don't talk to every day, and shake a hand, wave, smile, do something fun, and then when Joy is ready, she will get us started on our first hymn. It is a tradition here at the Metro East Unitarian Universalist Congregation to place each service within the larger sources and principles that we hold dear. While we are a religion that has no requirement of creed or belief, we will not force you to have a catechism or quiz you on our 39 articles before you can join our congregation. But we do have things that we support overall. And today our service is being drawn from a lot of our principles, but especially our sixth principle, which is the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. I know that his official feast day was a couple of weeks ago, but today we're going to look again at the life and work of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as we ask ourselves as a congregation at our mid-year meeting, what is our dream? For a long time, as long as I've known this congregation, our dream has been to be out from under an aging building that no longer supported our people or allowed them access to the facilities. For so long, our dream has simply been to be in a community that was thriving, to be in a place that was more welcoming for our LGBTQ members. We have achieved that dream. We are here in our new space that has such incredible accessibility, that is easy to get to, and we are in a community that is welcoming us and that is so excited to have us here with our unique way of living, loving, and being. Now we have a time and a place to say to each other, what next? What is our next dream? And how does that dream that we have as a congregation fit into the larger dream that we have as a people of building beloved community? I'm going to talk a lot today and deliver many excerpts from one of the most famous sermons. They call it a speech, just like they call him doctor, and they forget that he was a minister first. They forget that this man was steeped in the tradition of the Bible, and it was, in fact, the message of the prophets of Israel that drove him to seek equality for black and white in America. So I will call it what it is, the I Have a Dream sermon, because this sermon was preached to millions, and millions more have heard it in the years since. But I want every one of us to listen to these words again today as we ask ourselves, what is our dream? Let it soak into our bones and reignite our fire for justice. This justice is a flame that we hold in our hearts, but we know it is so easily put out by the daily grind of our world, by the endless doom scrolling of the horrors of media. But our sixth principle reminds us that our goal is world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was a martyr for his faith, says it like this, and I quote, "We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children." In that vein, I ask each of us, what is our dream? How will we serve justice, and how can we as a community create that beloved land? One of the ways that we do it is by holding each other in prayer and care and compassion. As we come together this morning, we'll start at the back and move forward, and row by row, you're invited, as you're willing or able, to come forward and place stones in the water that represent the joys and the sorrows that you bear in your heart. If you're unable to walk this distance, just wave your hand and somebody will take the stones up for you so that you too may participate, because in this place, accessibility for all is a way we serve justice. I invite you now to be in a spirit of prayer and meditation. Justice is a concept that links us to all other generations, both those that have gone before us that either forwarded or hampered justice in this world, and those that will come after us and what legacy we leave to them. Our children are our future, and they are also our here and now. Today is an intergenerational service, so if you have littles who need a package of stuff to do during service, please feel free to just wave your hand, and Jennifer or someone will grab a packet for you and make sure you've got that. If not, I would invite all of our kids to remain seated, and we are going to watch a video about the life and message of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Dr. King, a leader and a hero. Do you recognize this man? People all over the world know his face. They know his name. Now you will too. This is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he was an American hero. Dr. King was born in Atlanta, Georgia on January 15, 1929. That was more than 90 years ago. Here's a picture of Martin when he was 6 years old. He loved riding his bike, playing baseball, and eating ice cream. Martin's best friend was a boy who lived nearby, but that changed one day when his friend told him they couldn't play together anymore. His friend was white, and Martin was black. His friend's father didn't want his son playing with a black child. This made Martin sad and angry. He didn't understand why he couldn't play with his friend. During that time, there were laws in parts of our country that kept white people and black people apart. Keeping people apart like this is called segregation. The law said that black people and white people had to go to different schools, parks, and restaurants. The schools and parks for black people were often old, run down. The schools and parks for white people had newer books and better playgrounds. In some states, black and white people were not allowed to use the same water fountains and bathrooms. Buses were segregated too. When Martin was all grown up, the laws hadn't changed. He and many other people knew these laws were unfair, and the laws made him very angry. But he was a peaceful man. He did not want to use violence to change the laws. So what did he do? Dr. King used his words. He wrote letters, newspaper articles, and even books. He wanted to persuade people to end segregation. He organized marches. He led big groups of people as they walked through streets. They all thought the laws were wrong. Other people saw these marches and began to ask themselves, are these laws really fair? Dr. King also gave speeches. He spoke in front of thousands of people. In 1963, Dr. King gave his most famous speech at a big march in Washington, D.C. He talked about his dreams for the future. He said he believed that someday the world would be a better place.
My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Dr. King's words made people feel hopeful. When he spoke, the crowd cheered and clapped. Some people cried and hugged each other. They also believed the time had come for things to change. His dream helped other people dare to dream too. There were still some people who didn't want the laws to change. They were angry with Dr. King for trying to change them. They tried to hurt him and his family. That was scary. But Dr. King was brave. He didn't let those people stop him. He kept working. He knew he was doing what was right. Dr. King was a great leader. He inspired many people. He made them feel brave and strong. He made them believe that together they could make a change. It can be hard for one person to change the world on his or her own. But when thousands of people work together, they can make a big difference. And they did. It took a long time, but the laws of segregation did finally change. Dr. King's leadership and hard work helped make the world a better place. Dr. King is no longer with us. Still, people remember him and continue his good work. We celebrate him every year in January on his birthday. On this day, we take time to think about his life and what he did for our country. But you can celebrate him every day. You can spread his message of love, peace, and fairness by treating others with kindness and respect.
Our next hymn this morning is 169, We Shall Overcome. Good morning again, everybody. And I'm going to continue from that most famous sermon with another excerpt because I think this is important, especially in a time when people are increasingly willing to use violence and to justify violence and horrible terrorist acts as a way to find freedom. To remind ourselves that the prophets, including Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., remind us these things. But there is something I must say, he says, to my people who stand on the threshold which leads to the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. Today, we are honoring a great man, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but even more than the man who, although he was indisputably great, was also very flawed, as all humans are. Today, I want to talk about what he represents, which is the desire for justice and freedom that is at the very heart of who we are as Unitarian Universalists. As we gather and ask ourselves, who are we? Where are we going? What do we want to be in this community? It seemed appropriate to look at this speech, at this sermon, and the way that his dream has inspired people for decades, to look at the way that this inspiration has come for literally millennia, since the time of the prophets and even back before. When you realize just how steeped he is, hearing that snippet again, I'm remembering the way that he preaches, and if you have ever had the privilege of being in an African American church, the cadences and the rhythms of his talking are that of the Black church. And they do it for a reason. It is because they know that it is not simply enough to think these things. You must feel them. You must know them in your guts, in your kishkis, as they say in Yiddish. You must know deep inside yourself the truth of these things. My original title for this sermon was "The Ordinary is the Sacred," and the reason I said that is because it is so easy for us to forget that what we're doing on Sunday morning is somehow special and different and important, but that it cannot be our only moment of being different in the world. That we must go into our places of work, that we must go into our places with friends, that we must go into our interactions with every other human we cross paths with the same intentions and the same way of being. There is nothing more frustrating in so many ways to me than to see a city council meeting where people are standing up, all of these people who go to church on Sunday morning, saying they don't want a warming center in their neighborhood because those people might bring some kind of, I don't know what, cooties, I guess, into their neighborhood, big cooties into their neighborhood. It's -5 out. Nobody is going to be breaking into your house. They're going to be staying warm inside, okay? I can tell you, I've been outside in -5 with wind gusts of -25. Your hands are too numb to do anything. All you want to do is get warm. So why are these Sunday morning people turning right around on Wednesday night and voting against these things? This is the kind of dichotomy that happens when we see the sacred as something that is only done once in a while. When it is a special thing that we dress up in special clothes and we walk around in special ways and we act a certain way, be it at Mass or at temple or at the mosque, but then when we leave, we go back to being who we are. When we don't let that sacredness soak into our bones and change us from the core out. The prophetic works of the Bible are my favorite part of the scriptures because they are constantly throwing the words of Torah in the faces of the people with power. How many of you know the story of David and Bathsheba? Anybody? A few of you? Let me give you the as child-friendly as I can version. So David was the king. He was a very important king. He was the king of the whole country of Israel. And he saw a girl that he thought was really pretty. And he said, this girl's going to be my wife. There was just one little problem. She was already married. So he sent that guy, Uriah was his name, out to the front lines and had him killed off so that he could then marry this girl. Now you notice the woman in this story gets no say in the matter whatsoever, right? The king does what the king wants because he's the king. And that's how they used to be, and that is often to this day how rich and powerful men are. So he goes and he takes her for his wife, and she goes to have a baby, and the prophet Nathan comes in and tells a story to the king. Now, David is known far and wide as a blessed king. God is on his side. Everybody loves this king. He's a great king. And prophet Nathan comes in and says, "My king, we have a problem." And the king goes, "Well, what's wrong?" And Nathan goes, "My king, there was a poor shepherd, and he only had one little lamb. And he loved his lamb, and he cared for his lamb, and he cuddled his lamb, and he let his lamb stay in his house at night so it wouldn't be out in the cold. And somebody that was wealthier than him stole his lamb and killed it. They took his lamb away." And the king goes, "Well, whoever that person is, bring him before me, and I'm going to chop his head off. I'm going to throw him in jail. I'm going to do something bad to him." And Nathan looks up and goes, "But my king, you are that man." This is how the prophets operate, folks. They don't tell the future, but they do tell it like it is. So when I say that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was steeped in the prophetic word, that is what I am talking about. Now, it is a hard thing for anyone, much less a youngish, not really anymore, but, a queer white girl like me, to stand in the footsteps of a man so great. It's really weird, by the way, to realize that I'm older than he was when he was murdered. It's a weird place to be at when you think of these figures. Anyway, it's really hard to follow in the footsteps of something that great, but I feel like we have to look at this again, and we must ask ourselves again, what is our dream? We see just how little progress has been made in the years since his murder at the hands of those who would hold back justice. This year, Cop City in Atlanta is bulldozing historically black communities to create a militarized police whose sole purpose is to destroy lives, not keep the peace and help others. Police officers are wonderful. They do an incredible, important service, but they are not the military. The military's job is to fight the bad guys over there. If you train the police to act like the military, then they're going to think the bad guys are the people right here. And that's not how they should treat citizens, right? We're supposed to have justice under the law. We're all supposed to be treated equally. Our police officers should not be afraid of the communities they serve. And the communities they serve should not be afraid of the police. Anti-Semitism is at a record high here in America. I was talking with my rabbi on Friday, and she was sharing with me the fact that all of these churches who so want to work with the Jews, who so love the Jews, who are so friends of the Jews, and she says, "Can I come talk to you? Can I come share with your congregation what's really going on in Israel? Let's cut past the BS of all the news feeds. Let me tell you what people on both sides of this," because she knows people on both sides. "Can I share with you?" Cricket, cricket, cricket. Why is that? Because it's so much easier to just pretend the problems don't exist or pretend that it's might makes right than it is to look at complexity. Why is it that here in St. Louis, Metro black women are dying at a higher rate than they would in developing countries? You should not have to go to Latin America to have a baby just so you can survive. That's a problem. But yet, we can dream. We can dream bigger. This man has stirred our soul even decades later with his words, steeped as they are in our religious heritage and in our common goal of beloved community. In fact, he's the one that started that phrase that we have resonated with for so long. Doesn't matter what our ethnic heritage or our skin color or our religious background is, we must dream together if justice is to be had. We must dream of a world where we know the traumas of our history and where we're no longer shamed by our ancestors or absolved of their failings. We have to be honest and see how the young, healthy, rich, white, cisgender, heterosexual male is at the very tip-top of the privilege pile, and the rest of us get buried beneath the weight of their intersectional junk. We have to be real about the ways a handful of people are ruling the world, while the rest of us just simply accept it as the way things are. Why does it have to be that way? Let's dream bigger. Here at home, let's dream of a world where every person who can give birth only does so when and if they want to. Let's dream of a world where abortion is not an issue because no person gets pregnant unless they want to, and every baby is healthy because we put the money into curing genetic diseases instead of building some bombs. Where every conception is planned, adequate health care is for everyone, and no one goes bankrupt while a few rake in obscene trillions of profits. Let's dream of a world where all expressions of love and chosen family are welcome, where family is who you choose and love and laugh and hope and walk with together in the hard times. Let's dream of a world where your gender, whether it be your biology or not, does not limit who you are, the care you receive, your safety, day or night, or your ability to achieve your dreams. Let's dream of a world where economic class is shattered, where every child has enough to eat, where there is good housing for all, where adults surround our children with care, support, and hope throughout their lives. No longer can we, the people, allow 12 men to have the same wealth as 100 nations. No longer can we sit passively when our zip code tells me how long you're going to live. No longer can we pretend that it is enough for us to survive, to endure, to make it through the day. We must dream bigger. We must stand up and shout from the rooftops that we will no longer tolerate our neurodiverse children being labeled and left behind. We must create a world where all our children can follow their dreams, not be shunted aside because of poverty, neurodiversity, or the hardships inflicted on anyone who is different in most parts of our country. And I say to you, because I hear it every day, people come to me and they say, but I am alone. I am tired. I am beat down. I am poor. I am the one who is oppressed and attacked, and I just don't have it to give anymore. And I say to you, I hear you. I too am sick and disabled, exhausted and scared and afraid. The last time I stood here in this pulpit, my synagogue received a bomb threat and had to evacuate hundreds of little children who had showed up just to be with their friends and to learn more about Torah. That's terrifying because my son goes to that synagogue. Friends and family go to that synagogue. Some of my own UU colleagues are spouting rhetoric that is so anti-Semitic, they're claiming Israel has no right to exist. And I ask them, what does that mean? Do those 9 million people just stop existing? How do we solve violence with violence? I live in a part of Missouri so red that my family lives in fear of them calling family services on us just because we don't look like other families. Not because we've done anything wrong. So I get this. I went to the pharmacy the other day to pick up medication that is crucial for my health and well-being and was told that my insurance wouldn't cover it, so it would be $1,950, please. I am sick and exhausted and disabled and tired and worn thin and scared too, folks. I am not coming to you as someone on high who has experienced all good things. I am right here in the trenches with you, saying, we have to dream bigger. I watched hundreds of thousands of African Americans come together in the 1960s to march on Washington. I have read the letter from a Birmingham jail where the man was beaten, where the man was drugged through the streets, where he was thrown in jail simply because he dared to dream. I see the Jews and the blacks and the queers and all those other folks that everybody has hated for so very long, holding hands and being broken together. I know that almost none of those folks who were there got to live to see true racial justice because we still don't have it. But when they came together, things did change. Has his dream come true? Not yet. No, we still have so far to go. I will not work myself out of a job anytime soon. But by force of will and dint of numbers and pressure applied, things have changed. We have forced the moral arc to bend even just a little bit towards real justice. But we don't do it alone, and that's the thing that we forget. We are standing on the shoulders of our ancestors in faith. People like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr., Marsha Johnson, Sylvia Riviera, Miss Major, Stormy DeLaVray, the people who started Stonewall. These are folks who laid the first stones of racial, sexual, and gender justice with their very bodies. The mortar of their progress, of our progress, is their blood and tears. We may think we are alone, but we are not. And that's the thing, I'm not going to lie. I stood up here on January 17th thinking to myself, or December, whatever the day was that I preached on anti-Semitism, the day that I'm sitting here, I'm pretty much thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to get a phone call from Robin later this week, and she's going to say, we're not renewing your contract, and, that's just how it's going to be. But I felt like Esther, in the story of Esther, the king could have killed her. Now, thankfully, you guys don't get to do that. That's a good thing. I didn't have to worry about that. But, she said, but this is why I'm here, for such a time as this. There's not many Jewish people in Unitarian Universalism. And so to be a visible one is an important part of who I am. To be a visible pagan, to be a visible queer person, to be a visible all the things that I am, disabled, you name it. There's lots of labels. But it's scary. It's scary to stand up. But you know what happened? When I was honest and when I reached out and when I said we have to dream bigger, we have to look for peace, we have to look past the past. People called me, they emailed me, they talked to me, and all I heard was, thank you. Thank you for saying something. Thank you for risking it. No, I don't need the applause, thank you, but I don't need it. What I need is for all of us to be able to be empowered here, to have the courage to go out there and say what needs to be said. That's the point. You come here to get filled up and empowered so you can go out there and do what needs to be done. And every one of you is going to do it in a different way. For some of you, getting up and making it through your day and not committing suicide. You know what? That is a dream. For some of you, getting up and making through your day and saying, I deserve to live, is the proclamation that needs to be said. You don't always have to preach, as Francis of Assisi said. St. Francis said once, preach always the gospel, but only speak when needed. So here is my dream as we go into our mid-year meeting. Here is my dream. My dream is that one day my child will stand strong with those who look similar and those who don't, those in drag and those in suits, those who rebel in punk and goth and those who work in offices. My dream is that the military will be able to only serve justice and will be solely focused on taking out those who want to suppress the rights of others, not being used as tools for political ends. My dream is that our economy and our legislation will actually reflect the truth that we are all equal, that we are all citizens, and that we all deserve the same care. My goal, my dream, my hope, my prayer is that we will all understand in our kishkis that we deserve health, that we deserve a good standard of living, that we deserve a bountiful world to live in. My dream is that as a nation, as a world, we will say it is more important to cure cancer than it is to let rich men get richer. My dream is that we, the people, will vote all their privilege away until we are all equal and truly free. The thing is, and I have seen this over and over again, people will react in violence and say it is justified because I must be violent to be free. But the truth is, no one converts truly at the end of a sword or a gun. You can change slightly behavior as long as you have a gun pointed right at somebody. So if you want to spend the rest of your life with everybody pointing guns at each other, sure, that's one way to live. but it's not a way that's really good for anybody. For those of us who were around in the time of, East Berlin and West Berlin, we remember seeing the stories and the videos, right? The folks who may have had a chance to go to the old USSR, that's, I almost called him Stalin, but it's pretty close, that Putin wants to take us back to, right? The way that he wants to use these repressive, violent techniques to force people to do his bidding. It is legitimate to defend yourself from abuse and from violence. But at the end of the day, the kind of shift we're talking about, the kind of real equality and true justice, cannot be won with violence. Jesus knew that. The prophets knew that. Nathan did not come in and throw stones, literal stones, at David. He came in and he stuck him in the conscience. You are that man. Now, that probably wouldn't have taken if David had been a horrible, awful human being, right? He might have had to go about things a different way if the leader hadn't have been, more or less, a decent person. So there are different ways to approach different situations, but one thing I can tell you is that you cannot convert people truly by force. It has never worked, and it will never work. In Spain and Italy, to this day, there are Jewish communities known as conversos. Okay, these are folks that were forcibly converted. They had to be baptized into the Catholic Church or they would be killed. But you know what these families still do on Friday night? They gather around and they light candles and they say a couple of prayers and they have some bread and some wine every Friday night. Now, sometimes the families had no idea why they used to do that. But they knew that for their whole life and the great, many greats, this is the way they've done things. They may go to Mass on Sunday morning, but on Friday night, they keep the traditions of their people. Because you can't convert people by force. What can truly convert someone is love. Words that shape hearts and minds and open them to justice. And the thing that I really, if you walk away with nothing else I've talked about today, I want you to hear this piece. You cannot do it alone. We act as though Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. himself solely brought about the end of segregation. He did not. He had millions of people, literal millions of people working with him. Yes, he may have been a spokesperson. Yes, he may have been someone who inspired. Yes, he was someone who did an immense amount. But he was not the first or the last. He was not the greatest. He was one of many. And without those nameless, faceless millions, nothing would have changed. We are too tired, too oppressed, and too small individually to confront the systems and the powers that hold us down. And I liken this to being like an anthill, right? And there's a dinosaur that keeps stepping on us. If one ant tries to stop that dinosaur, it's going to be a pancaked ant. You're going to have squishy ant pancake. You're not going to have a change in the way the system works. But just like ants, each of us are stronger than we know. Each of us has been molded and shaped by our oppression into a creature that, while we may be tiny, we are capable of lifting far more than we know. No, one ant cannot lift a dinosaur, but enough ants can. We must dream bigger. We cannot be content in our own small gatherings any longer. We have to go out and find and gather all the ants we can, because together we are strong. Together we can overcome. No one Black family could overcome segregation on their own. It took Black allies and white allies and Jewish allies all coming together, all fighting together the system. It took everyone who believed, who dreamed, to come together, to see that shadow of the dinosaur coming at their anthill and to pile together in one focused way to overthrow the dinosaurs. And they ought to be extinct by now. These dinosaurs of oppression, the horrors of our daily lives, the centuries of injustice. These are dinosaurs and they belong in a fossil museum, not in our daily lives. And our task is not to do it alone. It has never been to do it alone, and it will never be to do it alone. Our task, those of you that are right here in this sanctuary, those of you watching online, our task is to gather the ants. Go find them, go rescue them, go bring them here. You've got one in your life. Every one of you, I can guarantee, has an ant of someone in your life, right? You know somebody who is facing that kind of oppression, that kind of stress, that kind of frustration, that kind of overwhelming, oh my God, the system is killing me. Find them, bring them here, because when we come together, we are strong. When we gather together, when enough of us do it, we can and will change the world. Instead of being crushed by the dinosaur systems that we're facing today, we will throw them off. And then we will say, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did, all our blessed ancestors in faith from Isaiah to Jesus and so on. We are free at last. We are free at last. Thank God we are free at last. Amen. And blessed be. Our final hymn is number 121. Okay, ants, it's time to bring back our food to the storehouse. We invite all of you who are able to give as you are able for your wonderful and generous community. If this is your first time with us, please don't give. This service is our gift to you. We ask that if you are able to go above and beyond and give of time or talent in addition to your finances, we ask that you catch Robin or any of our board members. They have the red on their name tags, and they will absolutely help you find a way to join our fellowship and our group. Yes, so it's going to be a bit, so just keep giving how you have been giving. If you're writing a check or whatever, just keep doing it the same way, and we will make sure to tell you as those things go on. So, all right, I invite you to join with me in our offering prayer. May this offering equip us to inspire love and seek justice.
Yeah, sure, real quick. As Claudia already said, we have our mid-year meeting coming up right after this. We said 11:15, I think. Yeah, less than 11:15. So, just so you're aware, okay. Couple of other things based on your message. Sorry, I know you're like sitting here, like your message talking about what's going on in Israel and things like that, and I know that when we talked about this, I think it was back in December. Yeah, it's been a while. But so back in December, we talked about the possibility of securing somebody to come in and actually have a discussion with us about these sorts of things. And so now that I'm back, I was gone for a couple of weeks for some family-related issues. But when I come back, I already spoke with a friend of mine who said, I've got some good ideas of some people that we can talk to so we can get an event set up at some point, whether it's right after church one Sunday or what have you, to have us be able to sit down and talk. Other things that came and was inspiring, Peg and I don't know if anybody else here went to that event to see Heather Cox Richardson speak over at Wash U last December. We were inspired by it. I have the book. I screamed in my car the entire ride back here, not because I'm mad at her, but because I'm like, oh my God, all of this stuff. And the long history of how this sort of happened. So here's the good news. We found out that they did a recording of that speech, and we are planning to have people have an event here on February 10th in the afternoon, and we're going to, I think there's an announcement out there, Peg, I don't know if you want to add anything, you can talk to Peg or me. And the goal is that we're going to start talking about listening to this, watching it, and then having a discussion about our role in all of this, how we collectively can do what we can. I mean, we have UU the Vote, and I have a friend of mine that wants to do stuff with us. Dance the Vote. It's a big thing that they've been doing in Missouri. But my friend Joan's like, hey, I'll come anywhere to do it. I'm like, excellent. So there's opportunities for us. The thing that's going to help us is getting people registered to vote. So UU the Vote is a really important part of that. We'll talk more today at the meeting about any other social justice opportunities and things that you have. In fact, associated with that event on the 10th, we're asking people for admission to have canned goods and things to go to the Glen Ed. So, Alan, I know if you have a list of things that you think we could use, let us know, because we don't want to send you stuff that you're like, we got 5 million of those, we need these things instead. So let us know so we can get the word out there. There's nothing else I can think of right now. We'll talk more later. Thank you, Dara. Oh, yes, go around.
So just to follow up on that, so the Anades, it's actually 11 o'clock as per usual, not at 10. Okay. Tea room. Okay. And then, right. Yep, sorry, February, it's this Thursday, February 4th, or next Thursday, February 4th.
Sunday speaker.
I understand now. Okay, so Thursday, February 4th, Anna D's at 11. February 4th, which is Sunday, the speaker, Amanita Caro, who's going to be amazing. We're so excited. We've been doing that for getting that information out to folks, and just keep sending out the invites. Also, on that note, so because our mid-year meeting is at 11:15, if any of you need sugar or food of any kind before you go to the mid-year meeting, go ahead and take your food and eat now. So I know the sign says wait till 11:30, but I don't want anybody getting hangry and voting badly in the meeting. Okay, so there's no voting, so you can be as hangry as you want, right? Okay. But just an update. Okay, so it should be a quick update, and then we can go have fellowship and lots of good times. All right, so the closing, for my closing words today, we're going to do the extinguishing of our chalice, and then I'm going to use the end of his speech. I am doing a direct quote, so some of the language is going to sound a little dated, but I just want you to understand it's his direct words, and I didn't want to mess with them. So I invite you to join me in reciting our prayer as we extinguish our chalice. The light of truth and beauty not be put out. Keepers of this flame until we meet again. And when this happens, and when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Amen and blessed
When I was a boy each week, on Sunday we would go to church, pay attention to the priest, that he would read the holy word, and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is, everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. When I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two. Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad. Miracles don't happen still. Now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at all. So challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, it barely wet my fingertips, but now I have to hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of air. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. questioning child's face. Say it's not a testament, that'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come. Say it's not a sacrament, I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, I saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush and singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then. Everything is holy now. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down. But I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy